we laid off a third of the company. We laid off 15 people at the very end of 2019. And it still is the worst day of my entrepreneurship career, of my business career. It took us a while to really find product market fit. It really took us like 5-6 years. We were just burning money. I genuinely believed in the early days, like all we had to do was get the right people and have the right culture in place. And it didn't matter if we had a good product or had a vision for what we were going to build. Too many people try meditating 3 times and then they're like, oh, this isn't for me. My mind's racing. I'm all over the place. I'm just bad at meditating and I quit. And it's like the analogy of you've never gone running in your life and you decide I want to be an ultra marathon runner, and you just go out one day and start running and you can't make it more than a mile. And you're like, marathon running's not for me.
Are there any specific mental exercises that you think every founder should be doing daily? Tom, welcome to Founders and Empanadas. I'd love to kick in and dive deeper into mindfulness in the workplace, and let's bite into some empanadas. What flavor do you have today?
I already did. I have a cheese and chicken one here. It's delicious.
Okay, amazing.
Cheers.
Salud. Tom, it's an honor to have you on. I'm a huge fan of Waking Up. I use it every single day. I don't say this about many products, and as cheesy as it sounds, it really has been life-changing for me. So thank you to you and your team for building this, and excited to talk about mindfulness and founder mental health, and no one better to bring on the pod than you. So super excited to dig in.
I'm excited to chat. And yeah, we have a Slack channel that runs 24/7 that just populates the user reviews that come in from the app stores, and it's one of the best parts of the job. Every time you see a new one of those come in and hear someone write something like what you just said about how this app changed my life or totally changed my perspective, or my day-to-day life is just so much more enjoyable, or whatever it might be. So it's a great place to work, and I feel lucky to be here.
So cool. We have one of those similar Slack channels where every time I open it up, it's a nice serotonin boost for me of just positive feedback. So great to hear that you have that. It's kind of incredible how it's changed my perspective on even mundane things. Like a good example would be yesterday I did the early premiere of the F1 movie, and I was thinking about one of Sam Harris's talks about even just the experience of going to a movie theater and watching a screen and it's just lights. And this is the only experience where we can deeply look at another human's emotions without them perceiving us back at us. I would never have had that train of thoughts before waking up. So it's been pretty incredible, the perspective change.
He is very good at articulating and pointing out things you had never consciously thought of before, that then once he says it, you can't go through the world not seeing it again. You'll probably now think that every time you watch a movie. So there you go.
So I understand you took over as CEO a couple of months back. And what's the story about how you met Sam and got connected with Waking Up?
I started a company in 2011 when I was in college in Boston. I was at Boston College at the time, and I ended up dropping out of school to run that business. It was a marketing technology company called Jebbit. I was a biology and theology major, so dropping out of school to start a marketing tech software company was never on my radar or in the cards for me when I got to school. But anyways, that's life. Life takes left turns you don't think of. And next thing I knew, I was dropping out of school to become a tech entrepreneur. But when I did it, I was 20, 21 years old, something like that. I was thinking, oh, we'll just, me and my friends will go build this business for 5 years and then we'll sell it. And then I'll figure out what's next with life. And I learned the hard way, as many people do, that software companies and entrepreneurship is much harder when you're actually doing it than it looks from the outside. So it took us 13 years to build that business instead of 5. We sold it last summer to a company called BlueConic. And I transitioned out of the CEO role and into a board member role. And I was thinking I was just going to take a couple of years off. It had been a long 13-year run. I was thinking I would just, take a couple of years and decompress and invest in other things I care about. Um, but the guy that led my Series A, his name's Paul. He led my Series A in 2017 and sat on my board for 7 years until we sold the business. He is one of Sam's closest advisors. He's been advising Sam since the app launched in 2018. And it's kind of one of those like right place, right time things. He had been they all had been him and Sam and Sam's business partner, Jaron. They'd been thinking for a while, we should bring in a CEO to run this business. Because Sam has many other obligations outside of just waking up and a lot of other things that Sam and Jaron are thinking about. And so the idea of having a full-time CEO that's just dedicated to waking up is something that they'd been thinking about. The company had never had a formal CEO in its 7-year existence. They were kind of different general managers at times and different people coming in. So, anyways, long story short, I started meeting them late last year, and we probably met once a week for most of Q4 just to get to know each other and kind of work together. And then it was New Year's Eve. I remember they sent me the offer to join, and me and my fiance talked about it. And the part of this story I haven't brought up is I have been a huge user of the Waking Up app since it launched. It's like it is one of the most used apps on my phone. I use it all the time. I had taken a Buddhism class in college that really changed my perspective on a lot of things and introduced me to meditation. And I had been an avid meditator for all 13 of those years, running Jebbit. And so, this to me was just something that I'm really passionate about. I know how life changing the app can be. And so the opportunity to go work with Sam and Jaron and the team here and work with Paul, who had really become my closest mentor and advisor through the years of running Jebbit. It was just too many good boxes checked. So I put off the idea of getting really good at golf again and leaning into golf more because that was a big sport of mine growing up. And here I am as the CEO of Waking Up.
Incredible. No better person to fit those shoes than someone that's been using the app since day one. And I'd love to take a step back and kind of talk through the early days of Jebbit and, maybe first of all, what does the name even mean? And second of all, kind of how did you implement waking up to deal with the roller coaster ride that is running a tech startup?
Couple things we can hit on there. I'll do it quick. I'll try to do it quickly. You can let me know if you want to go deeper on any of them. So what Jebbit ended up becoming was a software that marketing teams would use. So it's B2B software. Our clients are people like the NBA and Nestle and Procter and Gamble and the PGA Tour, like all mostly consumer brands. And they would use our software to create different types of interactive experiences that would engage consumers and capture data from them, capture first party data. So an example might be let's say I'm a company that sells golf clubs. I might do a quiz to find the right golf club for you. You've probably seen these just like from browsing the web as a consumer, right? You go in and you answer 5 questions and we say, hey, based on your answers, this is what you should buy. And so we were the software where the marketing team there could upload all their products, design it, write all the questions, make sure it looks on brand for them, and then put it on their website. And we would power the whole experience, all the logic and recommendations. But then most importantly, we take all that data of you answering the questions and give it to the brand. So we kind of had one foot in the creative design world, one foot in the data capture world. But that is not how it started. It started from just a business plan competition in in college. Sorry. We were one of those companies that kind of pivoted like 5 times until we really found our long-term product. But the original idea for Jebbit was we were trying to pay people money to answer questions about video ads they see as they browse the web, and only charge brands if you got the answers correct. So the idea was it would save the brands money and they'd only pay when people paid attention to their ads. And then you could make money watching TV online as a consumer. It seemed like a good idea for us as college kids. That product we never launched because it's way harder technically to build than a bunch of college kids could build. And you had to partner with all the Hulus of the world and all of that. But the first product we did actually launch was a website where college students only, you had to have a .edu email, could log in and answer questions about brands and get paid cash. So it was much more easier for us to control it technically, all being on our own website. And I will finally get to the answer of what Jebbit means. Jebbit means nothing, but where the where the name came from is when we were about to launch that website, we were called Added Up. We got a cease and desist from America that we had to come up with a new name. We were scrambling to come up with a new name. My roommate and co-founder in the company at the time, his name is Jeb, and we hadn't figured out how to pay people money online, so we were actually talking to banks about partnering with banks and mailing all of our users their own debit cards so that you'd answer the questions and the money would just be preloaded on the card we mailed to you. And my mom actually named the company. She heard Jeb and I brainstorming ideas one day. We were on a family vacation and I had brought Jeb on it. And she said, "What if you named the company Jebbit after Jeb and then you mailed people Jebbit cards instead of debit cards?" And so the name stuck. We had nothing better. The domain name was available. And then even when we pivoted the product, we never changed the name because it was just a simple name that people remembered.
I love it. And did those Jebbit cards last? That's an interesting,
Oh, we
method of
never even
payouts.
launched. We eventually learned that, like, PayPal was a thing, and we didn't
There you
have to
go.
make partnerships with banks and mail cards out to people, so that never actually happened. But that's what we were planning to do when we were young, naive entrepreneurs and had no idea what we were doing.
So, Tom, I'd love to hear more about how at Jebbit and now at Waking Up, you implement mindfulness with the actual team without making it feel forced. How are the actionable tips that you can give to other founders about how they can implement mindfulness to their team culture?
It is funny because over my 13 years at Jebbit, I evolved a lot on this topic and thinking. You know, in the early years, I used to literally, like, lead meetings with a 5-minute meditation, like company meetings, things like that. And I eventually kind of learned over time, I don't think you can or should force it on people. And so I ended up dropping a lot of that. I think I mentioned this to you earlier. Meditation was a big piece of my journey as a founder. I mean, it's still a big piece of my life today, but especially in those early years where you're trying to figure it all out, we had an office in Boston. I can remember I would bike in every morning, normally be the first one there. I would do a meditation in the conference room before work started. I would do a meditation most nights before bed. You mentioned the app waking up being life changing you at the start of this. Like it was a life changing thing for me as well. This was like 2012, 2013 when I was getting into it. I was using a lot of different sources then, and then I've been mostly on Waking Up since 2018 when the Waking Up app went live. But so yeah, I kind of learned over time forcing it company wide wasn't worth it. And I found an interesting thing happen when I stopped forcing it, which was I just kind of lived my life and went through solving problems and meetings and team events and whatever. And eventually the people that have natural curiosity and were intrigued would start talking to me about it, and they'd ask me a question like, "How are you so calm right now with all this chaos going on?" Or like, "Wow, you don't seem to get phased by, like, we just lost our biggest customer and you're just like, I'm shocked you're not, like, freaking out," or things like that. And I'd end up just talking to them about books I've read or practices I do or my perspective on things or stuff like that. And so I ended up, like, having a lot of these really awesome, genuine, like, friendships and relationships, getting connected over books or YouTube videos we'd send each other or things like that. But it kind of evolved to something, much more organic. Now that's a little bit about my Jebbit story. We can go into that a little bit. Having joined Waking Up, which is an app, for meditation and for, content that is going to help you understand the nature of mind more and things like that. As I'm sure you can guess, most people that are here have come here because they were deeply passionate about the content first and were already pretty into meditation. And so for them, they either reached out to Sam directly or they met the company some way, et cetera. And so, it's definitely a little bit different here than just kind of maybe your average take any chunk of 100 employees at any given tech company. But yeah, that's a bit about the Jebbit story.
And what does mindfulness look like internally at Waking Up? I'm fascinated about your company culture. Like, what does it look like beyond just meditation blocks on the calendar?
So I've only been here for a few months, but Ironically, I would say it is pretty similar. There is no like formal scheduled group meditation or anything like that. I think it's obviously just a topic that comes up a lot more because people will talk about something they listen to in the app or something they've been working on and going through on their own or whatever it might be. Um, but similarly, Sam and the team before I got here, they didn't implement anything formal. I think I obviously won't speak for Sam or anyone else directly, but I would think they have a similar perspective to me of like it's more of your own journey to go down, and they're not gonna force anything on anyone. And I mean, for what it's worth, we do have employees that had never meditated before when they got here, and they found us through just more traditional channels, a job posting or something like that. And so there are people on the team at kind of all different levels. There's the people that have been into this stuff for a long time and have done the long retreats in India and, spent decades, in this field and exploring mindfulness and meditation and everything around it. Yeah. And there's people that had never meditated before they got here.
Yeah, it makes sense. And just like anything with personal development, it has to be an opt-in. It can't be forced upon you, or else that's not effective.
And by the way, that was something I said to Sam when I got here and when I first met the team. Um, as I had dinner one night with Sam and his business partner Jaron and Paul, who I mentioned before, and I had met probably 80% of the team at that point, and I just said, "Hey, I'm I'm impressed by how diverse of a team you've built in terms of this topic and this spectrum, like how deep they've gone on meditation practice, because ultimately our job and our goal is to reach a lot of different people who are at all different stages of their journey. And so I think if you build a team of people that are all in on meditation and know the benefits and have studied with all these different teachers and things like that, you can lose sight of, where many people are at and how to go meet them and how to, introduce them to some of these topics, some of which are very simple and straightforward to understand, like maybe how the movie story landed with you that you mentioned at the top of this conversation, and others are much harder to understand and might take years and years of contemplation to get even a glimmer of an insight into what Sam or one of our other teachers are talking about in the app. And so I think it's great that I think Sam and the team intentionally, because I don't think they do anything that isn't very thoughtful. I think they intentionally built a team of diversity on this spectrum.
Makes total sense. And I would imagine a major population of the Waking app user base is just maybe once a week or once a month popping in and very casual, and kind of building tool features for those users as well is equally important.
We've got that, and then we've got our people meditating hours every single day using the app and listening to lots of long form conversations and things like that. So yes, there's a wide range.
I love it. And at Waking Up or before at Jebbit, can you share a time where mindfulness helped you make a hard business decision with more clarity, and kind of how you specifically used mindfulness in that decision making process?
It's hard to pinpoint like a specific thing, just in the sense that uh it just kind of becomes something integrated with your whole life and your whole experience. I mean, I can tell you so many stories about Jebbit in general. I mean, I briefly mentioned one of them earlier. Um, it took us a while to really find product market fit. I mentioned the pivots earlier. It really took us like 5, 6 years. And so for the first 6 years of the company, we had raised $3 million. We kept things very scrappy, small team of 10 people or less. And then, finally in kind of the 2017, 2018 timeline, things started getting better. We started gaining traction with our first like real product that was taking off. We raised a $5 million Series A, a $12 million Series B 2 years later. And then, the end of 2019, we were doing about $5.5 million of revenue. And at the end of 2019, we lost our biggest customer and two other customers that were in our top five. And we literally went from a $5.5 million ARR company to like a $3 million ARR company almost overnight. We had grown our team up to 45 people because we had raised the $17 million and we were closing deals and we were growing. And, me and my co-founders had to go in and we laid off a third of the company. We laid off 15 people at the very end of 2019. And it still is the worst day of my entrepreneurship career, of my business career. But, we sent everybody home that day, the day we did it. And then the 30 people that were still with the company, we got them into a conference room, said what just happened, said, go home and take the rest of the day off. And we said, come back in tomorrow morning and we're going to give you a presentation and answer all your questions on what we learned, what went wrong, and what is going to be different going forward. And, when they came back in the next morning, it was like a 2-hour long, not just presentation, but presentation and Q&A and talking. I probably gave a 45-minute intro, took them through a bunch of slides, all our learnings, where we were going to go, what we were going to do differently. And, looking back on that, I think it was like a very honest, very hopefully like humble assessment of what we had thought, what had gone wrong. I can get into those details if it's helpful, but I don't think it's important for the high level narrative. And long story short, all 30 of those people stayed. Nobody quit. And we buckled down and followed that new plan. And a little over 2 years later, we had gotten the business to a totally different place. So we raised a $70 million round of funding with Vista, the big private equity fund, and, eventually sold the company last year. But like, that was a really low point. I mean, we had thought before, if you talked to me mid 2019, like we had thought we'd gone through all the hard stuff. We thought like we'd gone through the pivots and the finding product market fit. We were like, we finally made it out of that stage. Now we're like, we've raised some real money. We have some real revenue. And so to just get kind of punched in the face and lose so much of it, it was a really low moment. And I think a core piece of meditation and mindfulness is helping you just be in the moment and accept reality, whatever that reality is, whether it's really bad like it was then, or whether it was really good, like the day we closed our first $1 million customer, many other awesome days. And I think just the ability to accept that and look at it with fresh eyes and be open and honest about what happened. I think a chunk of that was probably just how me and my co-founders were wired to begin with. And I think a chunk of that was probably a lot of what I was able to cultivate and develop through years of just sitting in silence with your thoughts or doing a guided meditation or whatever it might be.
It's a incredible story, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about just the aftermath of that 2-hour long session. How was team morale impacted, and how long did you feel like it took for the team to be operating back at full strength?
I mean, as a founder, it was the scariest thing I ever did. Not just because of the obvious that you have to tell, in our case, 15 hardworking people that didn't deserve to lose their job, that they were losing their job, right? I mean, a layoff is totally different than firing someone. This isn't, hey, you've been underperforming and we've told you and we've documented it and you're not getting better and we got to let you go. This is like, we as the founders mismanaged the business and it's our responsibility and you are now losing your job for it. Like, we get to keep our jobs, you're losing it. And I was just terrified it was going to kill the culture. Like, culture was very important to me. We had put a lot of time into it. In fact, I think it's our culture is the only reason we even like got off the ground in the first place and made it through those 5 years of pivoting and trying to figure out what our product was going to be. And I just thought, this is it. I was like, we're going to lay off 15 people. The culture is going to plummet and, we're going to, it's all the fears. The business is going to shut down. We're going to go from 3 million to 1 million and 1 million to 0. And just, it's going to be the end. And everyone's going to not want to be here or they'll be miserable. I don't know which one was worse, whether they would all quit or whether they would just be miserable in their jobs every day. But anyway, so those were all the fears. I think Ben Horowitz's book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, was a really good one for me to read. And he talked about just like when he had to do this, literally like packing up everyone's boxes with them and walking them to their cars and like doing it face to face and things like that. And so, we did all that. We were face to face with people. We were honest. We talked about it. And, I mean, it will sound cliche, but it's true, and it's cliche for a reason. Like, the culture only got stronger. My co-founder Michael says it all the time. He's like, once you kind of like get in the trenches with a team and go through something really hard, and then you come out of it on the other side, like, the culture got so much stronger. And it's easy to sit here and say on like a podcast years later, you kind of document it with the big moments. So I'm like, oh, this happened, layoff, 2-hour presentation. And then 2 years later, a big $70 million fundraise. But of course, everybody was feeling the momentum up till that point. Like, you don't just raise $70 million out of nowhere. We had 2 years of really good growth from that $3 million low point up until then. And it was obviously a narrative I was able to explain to investors. This is what was wrong. I mean, long story short, our go-to-market strategy was all wrong, and we were selling these big deals to CMOs rather than more of a bottoms-up land and expand approach, where you sell smaller deals to lower-level people on the marketing team and then expand within a company. So, like, within a month or two of changing the strategy, we started closing smaller deals, seeing all the user metrics go up, building that momentum. But I think from reflecting and talking to some of the employees that stuck with it, they were just like, you guys explained everything. You were honest about it. They, of course, all saw what was happening anyways. Like, they're part of the company. It wasn't like I like taught them anything they didn't know. It was just the fact that I got up there and said what everyone was thinking and what everyone was seeing and owned it. They were like, yeah, it gave us confidence that you and your co-founders are the types of leaders we want to work with. And we were down to give it 6 more months and see how it goes. And then it goes well for 6 months. So I'll give it 6 more months. And the next thing you know, it's been a couple of years and the business is doing much better.
Incredible. Awesome, Tom. Well, let's take a little empanada intermission. What other flavors do you have there?
Oh, I'm still on the cheese and chicken. I got some beef ones here too. I can pull that out.
Let's get in there. Yeah. So, Tom, one thing that I feel waking up does incredibly well is blending the science with spirituality. Um, and I'm curious, how do you navigate the tension between more modern neuroscience and traditional spiritual and contemplative practices within the app?
We're going to get a bit into my own personal journey here, but I grew up Catholic, was brought to church every Sunday. Family was religious, grandparents were religious. Went to Boston College, which is obviously a Jesuit institution. And then it was at Boston College that I took that Buddhism class that I mentioned. And that's when I was introduced to meditation and things like that. And so, Sam has obviously talked very publicly about his opinions on religion, and, has written books on it. Like, to me, it's, and obviously everyone at Waking Up has all their own opinions. So I'll give you, my journey and my opinion on it. But like, to me, I don't feel a ton of tension there. I totally get where the question's coming from, but like, to me, it's all ultimately describing and getting at the same ultimate reality. And whether you're using science to get there or religion to get there, I think what all the religions are, even within all the religions, to me, when I read them or study them, and I think I mentioned I did pick up theology as a second major in college. Like, to me, it's all getting at the same ultimate truths. And so I've personally been one to explore a lot of different truths and see a lot of the similarities in them. There's, of course, many ways religions have been manipulated and used for negative things and all of that, which is probably a path we don't need to go down, but that's a thing. And so, yeah, I mean, I was drawn to Waking Up a lot because of Sam and because of Sam's approach to your point, the neuroscience background, but really just his desire to just go much deeper than any of the other meditation apps. I mean, when Waking Up launched, I had all the other meditation apps on my phone. I was kind of bouncing back and forth between them. And I actually remember I first heard about it when Sam went on the Tim Ferriss show, and I had read Sam's book, Waking Up. And I remember my first thought was, that's weird. That sounds like a bad idea. Why would anyone launch another meditation app? It's already 2018. And, but I was like, you know what? I respect Sam. He's a smart guy. I'm going to download this app and check it out. Like, he must have some reason why he thought the world needed another meditation app. And I did the intro course. We have a 28-day intro course. It was a little bit longer then. And I mean, long story short, I was hooked. Waking Up became my home. I ended up deleting all the other apps And the first time the Waking Up team offered a lifetime membership, I bought it in a second, and it's been the main thing I've been using. And I appreciate his approach. I appreciate how much deeper the app goes. I appreciate all the other teachers and the massive amount of content, the library they've built over time. So sorry, I think I went off of a tangent on your question. But yeah, to me, it's not a huge tension because it all describes the same thing as my main summary.
I'd say the thing that I most appreciate about waking up is this is one of the earliest courses in that first month training program, but talking about how when we think about physical training, it's very evident, very easy to see that going to the gym or seeing a movie star that has a great physique that was developed from great diet and exercise. But within the mind, it's so much more challenging to kind of quantify or objectively see what that looks like. But it's the exact same practice of being able to train the mind and resilience against stress and all the craziness that comes with being a founder.
Which for many of us causes a lot more pain than any of the physical ailments that might come from not exercising as much or not eating the best diet.
And I'm curious, just for the founders that are listening in, what are some actionable tips or what are areas where you think founders miss when they treat mindfulness as just a performance tool?
I mean, there's an awesome video on our YouTube channel. It's about 9 minutes of Sam talking about why waking up is different. I think it might literally be called "Why Waking Up is Different," or at least it's something close to that. But going into it with like a very short-term expected outcome is not the path. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm just going to start doing this so I can sleep better tonight or so I can be like a little bit less stressed. I mean, that can be a thing. And if you start meditating, you will probably experience some immediate benefits. But I think the part that really drew me to Sam and the Waking Up app was, we're going to go much deeper and we're going to explore like what is consciousness, and we're going to just like ask some of life's most difficult questions head on. And of course, the irony of that is if you're willing to have that intellectual curiosity and patience and dedication to go deeper and to maybe be super confused at times and still explore that uncertainty and keep asking questions and keep showing up. Like, of course, the irony is you will still get those more short-term, more like mundane is the wrong word, but those more short-term benefits I'm talking about. You're still going to sleep better at night. You're still going to be less reactive to your kids or have a better relationship with your spouse or whatever it might be, but it just comes from a much deeper place of understanding. And so I think I mean, it's funny you use the exercise analogy because it's probably not much different than that, right? It's probably like a lot of people want to just like go work out for 2 weeks and have a six pack. And it's like, yeah, it doesn't quite work that way. You have to like be more patient and go deeper with it. But so I do think like what your ultimate goal is from the starting point can be a mistake. And then I also just think too many people try meditating 3 times and then they're like, oh, this isn't for me. Like, my mind's racing. I'm all over the place. I'm just bad at meditating and I quit. And I mean, someone said this once, I can't remember, but it's like the analogy of you've never gone running in your life and you decide I want to be an ultra marathon runner, and you just go out one day and start running and you can't make it more than a mile and you're like, marathon running's not for me. It's like, okay, well, this is a practice. You've never put any time into this, so it's not that it's not for you. It's just you haven't spent the time with it. And by the way, just because your brain is racing and you have a million thoughts, that doesn't mean you're, you know, bad at meditation. The whole point is to just sit and observe whatever comes up. So what's coming up is, wow, I have a really busy mind that thinks a lot and is bouncing all over the place. And it's like, yeah, that's all of us. If you don't ever, unplug and disconnect and sit and, do all the things that come along with a meditation practice.
Exactly. And what I found with my journey is just like with physical training, it's not a straight trajectory. You're going to have days that are setbacks and areas where you feel like you're regressing in the practice. And it's just a matter of consistency over time, like most things in life.
Totally. I will have days I sit down and I'm like, oh my God, 45 minutes just went by. I could do this for 10 hours. And then I'll have days where it's like, it's, I have to look at my phone. How long's it been? Oh my God, it's only been 4 minutes. How has it only been 4 minutes? And it's just like, that's just the reality.
Tom, are there any specific mental exercises that you think every founder should be doing daily?
I think gratitude practice is a big one. I always had when we were going into an office every day, I always had a notebook on my desk, and over time I explored all different types of like journaling templates or journaling practices or things like that. But I think the one most consistent one I had was just writing down at least one, if not two or three gratitudes. I think it's so easy to get caught up in all the things going wrong, all the things your company hasn't achieved yet, other founders or companies you see in the news that seemingly are doing better than you, or maybe just straight up are doing better than you. Their company just went public or just raised money at a billion valuation or whatever. Um, but I think all those things are so easy to fall into some of those traps as a founder, and most founders are really competitive, and most founders have been used to achieving and winning in other aspects of their life. So, all of those things can be hard. And I think gratitude is just a really awesome practice there. I remember, so we had raised almost $2 million out of the gate, and then we had to shut down our first product. We were pivoting to a different product, and things weren't going well. It had been like a year. We hadn't figured out what the new product was going to be. We were just burning money, burning money, burning money. There were like 8 people on our team, something like that. And we hit the point where our bank account dropped below $1 million. And I would always share openly with the team what the finances were. And so people were starting to get really down. Like, we've now burned through half our money. We've got less than $1 million left. We have no idea what we're going to pivot this product to. We shut down the only thing that was giving us revenue. Like, it was starting to get bleak. And I don't even remember this meeting, but my co-founder Michael reminded me of it when after we sold the company, and one night we were just reflecting on times. Apparently, I went in like, guys, there's 2 ways we can look at it. This is going to be a cliche glass half full, glass half empty analogy, but it was real. I was like, we can look at it as all those things, or we could look at it as somebody just gave us $1 million to go build anything we want. And we love working with each other. We're excited. We're young tech entrepreneurs, and we now have a blank check for $1 million. Go, build our blank canvas to go build whatever we want. And Michael was like, man, the second you said that, it just flipped everything for me. And I was like, oh my God, yeah. 2 years ago, me, when I was a junior in college, if you had said, fast forward 2 years, you and your friends are going to have an office in downtown Boston and $1 million in the bank to go build whatever you want, he would be like, I would be jumping up and down for that. And the only reason I'm coming into work upset every day is because, well, we used to have two, and we used to have a product doing revenue, and now we don't anymore. And so, anyways, I think just being grateful for the opportunity and being grateful for what we had and shifting our perspective there was like a really important moment for some of the team.
Tom, last question for you. What's one strongly held belief that you have that 99% of other founders disagree with?
I don't know if this is a good answer to this question, because I think a lot of founders probably do agree with this, but the only thing that's coming to my head is like, I genuinely believed in the early days, like, all we had to do was get the right people and have the right culture in place, and it like didn't matter if we had a good product or had a vision for what we were going to build or things like that. I think I told you, like, our first product was literally just paying college kids money to answer questions about brands, and we didn't think that was ever going to be the long-term thing, but we also didn't know where we were going. It was like, we got to go figure it out. And so, you know, for the most part, I think that ended up being true and ended up playing out. I mean, it did turn out we had to eventually build a really good product and find product market fit and all of those things. But I do still probably stand by, like, if you like, obviously every startup is different, right? There's certain companies get created because it's like a brilliant, researcher or engineer in a lab at MIT or something, and they just like create some incredible piece of technology, and it's like, now we're going to build a company around this. Like, that wasn't our story. We were just like a bunch of young naive college kids that wanted to be entrepreneurs and build a business. And so, you know I think too many founders are too focused in the early days, and I do a lot of like mentoring and advising of college entrepreneurs now. I think too many are too focused on like, we need to nail the product and we need to like have this big amazing idea, and it's like, and then they just spend too long on the sidelines, like planning and researching. And for us, it was like, just dive in and have something, and then let's go figure it out and evolve and follow it. And it definitely wasn't a straight line journey to success, but we eventually got there. And I think that all went back to just like a commitment to great people and a great culture. But yeah, I think it's a semi cop out answer to your question, because I think a lot of founders would tell you great people and great culture are the most important thing.
All good. Works for me.
If I think of something, I'll email it to you later. But
Perfect. Well, Tom, thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate you diving into your background, and I'm just the whole time I've been visualizing what these debit cards would look like getting in the mail.
never even got far enough to design it. So
Awesome. Tom, where can people find you and find out more about waking up online?
for me, LinkedIn's probably the easiest, or tom@wakingup.com is my email now. And then it's just wakingup.com, or you can find us in any of the app stores.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and wishing you the best.
Thank you.